You excited for another video? So, I was feeling burnt out from my last video. I had just sat through a series of games that I didn't like whatsoever, and on top of that, I had to review it. And so, I didn't have much energy left to put into a new video at the time. So I decided that I needed a detox. A game review detox. I looked at what I had. A PC, a MIDI keyboard, and a drawing tablet. I opted to go for the drawing tablet. Prior to this, I really don't have any experience in drawing, other than a few doodles and scribbles when I first got the tablet months ago. I haven't really used it until now. I had an interest in drawing, but I never really fully committed to it. Until now. So I had to decide what to draw, but there is a lot to choose from. There's landscape, realism, caricature, anime, furry, AI. And since I couldn't decide for myself, I decided to let somebody else do it for me. This is Quentin. He's a wise and smart young man.
Oh shit, I'm going out of my chair again.
He's the leader of my Discord server. Surely he must have a good solution.
I'm doing a project. What art style should I do?
The CalArt style.
No!
And so it began. Quentin had ordered me out on a 90-day journey. 90 days of the CalArt style. But what is the CalArt style? Is it an art style you'll learn at the University of CalArts? No. Apparently, it isn't an art style at all. Originally, the term CalArt style was coined by Ren and Stimpy creator John Kricfalusi. Oh no! Who in a blog post back in 2010 accused young animators of regurgitating. Yeah, you gotta love those fuckers, huh? Accused young animators of regurgitating the Disney-esque animation style without mastering the underlying animation skills. So, like most other words and terms, CalArt style has kinda lost its original meaning over time. It's mostly used negatively now though, as a catch-all term trying to criticize certain styles of animation. Art styles is kinda like fashion and trends to me. They come and they go, and all you can really do is weather it out if you don't like it, or squeeze every bit of joy you can out of it for as long as it's there until it's eventually gone and forgotten. Which is why I consider the CalArt style more of an unofficial category for simplistic and soft-looking art styles. And the subcategory being the more specific styles of the respective creators of each show. Just like how I consider the CalArt style to be a subcategory of the category of cartoons, and how cartoons is a subcategory of animation, and whatever. Oof. So what shows did I consider as worthy of being lumped into one big Pinterest collection together for me to draw and take inspiration from? Well, The Amazing World of Gumball. Of course I started out with this show. I liked it as a kid, though I quickly realized that mostly only the main characters fit the CalArt style, so I actually only drew Gumball, Anais, and Nicole. I did, however, make an animation much later into my 90 days featuring Darwin and Rob, if you're interested in that. So, I liked the show and the vast amount of facial expressions, but it just wasn't CalArts enough. After this, I drew Uncle Grandpa once. The similarities are uncanny when you realize this is my third drawing so far. Again, I felt like Uncle Grandpa wasn't exactly CalArts enough, and I thought I would never see him again. I also really didn't want to fucking draw Uncle Grandpa. Gravity Falls. Another obvious pick. I remember when it was first announced, I was a big fan of regular show back then, which also didn't make my CalArts requirements, and as a stupid kid, I thought it was made by the same people, despite being aired on 2 different networks, simply because they had big, perfectly round eyes. Makes you have some understanding for why grown-ups think similar looking shows come out of the same place. I started out with Dipper and Mabel, of course. I wasn't having too hard of a time despite it only being day 2, but as you can see, I hit a little snag when it came to Mabel's colors being something I'll talk about later, followed by Wendy and Seuss. I was having a hard time with Seuss for whatever reason, and I never drew him again. Not only because I didn't like him, but also because I'm not a huge fan of perfectly circular eyes. You can blame the later seasons of Family Guy for that. So I actually didn't draw any more Gravity Falls, except for Wendy a few times sporadically, and this Baby Dipper later on. We have an unfinished Marco, day 3, the second freehand drawing where I try to replicate the CalArt style. It's my friend, Graylin, who mostly draws hentai. Looking back at it now, it looks flat, the hair looks like a black mop, and he's being sucked into something here. Other than that, I think it looks fine. It reminds me a bit of the regular show style and also Gravity Falls. That's pretty much it for week 1. At this point, I've made 21 drawings. mostly headshots, and apparently they took me 80 to 70 minutes to do, so I definitely had a way to go. But it was only week 1, so I wasn't really stressing, which is important. Week 1 is also when I found the art style that I loved the most. The Owl House. I'm not so sure what it was about the Owl House. I don't recall seeing the show on TV, mostly because by the show's start, I was studying hard to become a mechanic, something I'm clearly not doing right now, but I like the style a lot. It's an outlier for sure for what I consider as CalArts, but it could not escape my grasp. I drew a lot of it. I was good at it. It kinda came naturally to me, to be honest. 90 Days of the Owl House style.
I did it because I liked it. Hell, I loved it.
Anyway, week 2 started off with a bang. 1 unfinished Amity drawing. My first commission, thanks V, she made me draw Stephen getting inflated. I then decided to draw him in the trenches of World War I. And while I was drawing the 5th drawing of day 8, this happened.
You ever been insane, Grill? Don't forget, I can draw you in the CalArt style any day I want. You should smile. We should smile more. We should learn from the cartoons. Look at that face. Let's put a smile on that face.
I don't really remember what happened. I was just really tired at that point, probably. But it was the only incident I had during my 90 days. So that's good at least. Week 2 is also where I drew some not so CalArts things. Maybe I felt like I needed some air, I don't know. Then again, after that, I kept true to the project and went back to drawing from the vast amount of references I had collected on my Pinterest. Don't worry about that one. Some more Owl House, of course, and we're now on week 3. By this point, I had started sketching my drawings out before I did the line work. I'm not so sure how much of a difference it made, but I assure you that much later on, a new sketching process probably helped me elevate a few levels in a single day just because of it. I would like to get better at sketching as I feel like I don't really break down the references into shapes, so I'll probably practice a bit on that as well. I mean, as long as I sketch before I draw in general, it should come with time, but I think if I focus on it for some time, I could really improve dramatically in a short amount of time. You know, just a thought. I did another freehand drawing of my friend Colin, who is famous for Personally, I think this drawing is worse than my second freehand drawing, but at least this one has a body. I made another freehand drawing of him, so I'll comment on this one later. I also drew my first complete Marco, mainly as a response to my friend Graylin, who mostly draws hentai, who, in an act of solidarity, also drew something CalArts related. He seemed to be having a hard time with it for some reason, which gave me a confidence boost. In no way did I think I was a better artist, obviously, but this was a time when the fact that some artists have their own style, and that they are obviously more fluent in their respective styles, that really cemented into my brain at that point. Day 20, I must have made the first drawing I was proud of. I felt so moved that I had to start an Instagram account, and a TikTok. Despite being proud, pretty soon after I started to feel not so proud. It felt like my drawings were regressing, they became simpler, and I started looking for a way out. So I tried some new styles. I drew a character from the Loud House. This is the only Loud House drawing, I promise, which weirdly gave me a confidence boost to keep going. I tried Gravity Falls again, OKKO, and Adventure Time. I'm not particularly proud of these drawings, but I did start paying more attention to the details of the different styles. For example, I realized that Steven Universe and OKKO seem to have more of a messy type of line work, especially OKKO. Properly realizing that there are actually different brushes and pen types out there was probably one of my first revelations during this project. It wasn't a huge revelation by any means, but it's something I noticed and pay attention to a lot more now, whenever I'm looking at art or different styles. Day 27. Almost a month in, a lot changed, really quickly. I really started drawing or making backgrounds now for the characters, and I started playing around with effects after I was finished drawing, like the telltale blur surrounding the characters in my drawings. I mostly added the blur in hopes that it would make the characters stand out more and that the drawing would be easier to read. So, going into week 4, I really took this with me and started adding an outline of blur to my characters, unless it was black and white. And it's something I kept up until the end of this project, so though I do think it's cheap and really only works for drawings, I don't think it would work in animation, for example. So I started thinking of solutions to this, which led me to my next revelation: backgrounds. I haven't looked much into it yet, but I would like to learn how to properly draw a landscape or a background in a proper way to make it easier to take in a scene. Seeing as if I were to draw a character and background in the same style, it becomes kinda hard to tell the difference unless I use the blur. After that, not a lot happened for a while. I was just chugging along, making drawings and giving them backgrounds, and in week 6, I made this. I really liked how it came out. Obviously, I would have a few things to say about it now, like how I think the finger is a bit too short. Thanks, Colin, for pointing that out. And I'm not a huge fan of how sharp some angles are. Clearly looks a bit off when compared to the actual reference. It didn't seem to bother me too much back then, and even now, I'm not too ashamed of showing it off. Of course, it's not my best work, but it was a real confidence booster back then. Then, towards the end of week 6, I finally did another freehand. Remember this bad boy? Well, now he's at a GameStop, trying to decide between Baldur's Gate or Risk of Rain 2. Compared to the first drawing, he is way less flat now and has life in his eyes. I'm just glad he doesn't remind me of the Cabbage Patch Kids anymore. I still regret not making his sleeves pop out more, seeing as it's the same single pen stroke going from his elbow to his wrist, and his right arm is better than the left. Something about the line arcing or bending makes it look off, but that didn't matter too much at the time, because I had a greater problem. My computer blew up shortly after, at least my graphics card did. This is when my Papyrus era began. I was thrown back into the past and had to do my work with pen and paper. During this era, I was fairly confident in my sketches at the time, and of course, being mainly focused on digital drawing, I didn't exactly enjoy having to use pen and paper. Maybe I should try pen and paper a bit more, you know, don't knock it till you try it. So, I decided to focus on something I felt like was important. Faces and expressions. I did some freehand doodles at first, but I did not like how they turned out at all. So once again, I decided to use references, and eventually I made so many that I started enjoying the ones I made myself, which led me to another revelation. I realized that drawing freehand isn't that easy. However, once I had drawn a lot from reference, making my own faces became easier, and slowly, the line between my own creations and the ones I made from reference got harder and harder to point out. So I don't feel as bad now for not perfectly drawing something in freehand, but one day I should be able to make something good, as long as I keep at it, I guess. I mean, that's how my friend Graylin, who mostly draws hentai, manages to quickly draw out our unholy prompts during our weekly Gartic Phone sessions. But then, early week 8, I made this. My computer was still broke, but a new era had begun. The golden era. At this point, I felt like any drawing was a banger. I was mostly happy with my work and progress so far, but I tried a week with a new pen just to test it out, but I didn't like how it turned out, so I went back to the old one, which is when I made this, and hit yet another revelation. If you're Rebecca Sugar, or if you know this character well, there's probably one glaring issue with my drawing: the dress. The reference I used was this, so I had nothing to go off of after the waist. It wasn't a huge deal when I was making the drawing, but as I finished it, I realized that something seemed off. So, I found another image of the character and realized I had not properly drawn her dress. Today's revelation was, use more references. So from then on, if I was unsure of what a character was supposed to look like, I either omitted whatever was missing if I didn't know what was missing, or I looked at other references. Week 10, I redid some old drawings for the very first time. About a month or so apart, and with a month left of the project, this was a slightly mixed confidence booster. I loved seeing how far I've come since the first month, but I also wondered what would happen in the next month, or if anything would change at all. But I just kept on drawing anyway. Then, I made this perfect lapis, almost, and compared to the first few times I tried to draw lapis, knew that I had come a long way, but there's also still things to improve on. Fast forward a bit, and a few drawings later, I made this abomination. Drawing this one made me realize that I don't have a strong grasp on perspective at all, which is why for the next few drawings, I really focus on drawing specific shots or dramatic scenes. Week 11. Up until this one, my shading mostly consisted of just adding a new layer, turning the opacity down and choosing the color black, and doing my thing. I started playing around with it a bit, and I realized I really need to practice shading sometime. So now I guess it's time to talk about colors and shading. Up until day 51, I wasn't really ever proud of the work I did when it came to colors. I was happy when there was a sudden change in my coloring, but I realized I probably have to sit down soon and learn some color theory and shading. I don't know if they're the same thing. I mean, I think they are. I've only been doing this for, 90 days. I'm not a professional. My limited knowledge of color theory is a very big obstacle the way I see it. My drawings are mostly fine, and I'm not afraid to show off my more recent work with or without colors, but I think learning to color the drawings differently and learning different ways to shade would add another layer to my drawings, as I think they look really flat even if I add a layer of Walmart shading. Another video idea perhaps? Colors aside, the biggest revelation and the biggest jump in progress I saw during my 90 days were actually right towards the end of the 90 days. I present to you this unfinished drawing of Garnet. This is when I realized my sketching process sucked harder than a supercharged Henry Hoover. I had been thinking about changing my sketching process up a bit, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back. My sketching process changed overnight. Before, I just had general shapes and a very quick and loose sketch of the reference image that I was going to draw, whereas now I kind of have a quick drawing with inaccuracies that I point out to myself before I start the actual drawing. It's not exactly a foolproof process, but I think it's good for fixing small mistakes, as I would just note down small errors I made in the sketch and fix or focus on them when I'm doing the actual drawing. If a mistake is too big and offsets the entire drawing, I would have to fix it in the sketch anyway. So small mistakes did not cost me time, but big ones did. Pretty much overnight, I felt like there was a jump in progress, so I kept the new sketching process around. Fun fact, in day 8, I did something similar, but back then, drawing just a headshot was as taxing as making a full drawing is today, so I didn't finish it, and I also seemed to do a lot of chicken scratching, which I'm not the biggest fan of, so I didn't finish it, but I think it was turning out a lot better than most of my other drawings back in the early start when I look back at it. Just a shame I didn't think about my sketching process sooner than day 78. That aside, nothing really happened after that. I tried some Adventure Time drawings, despite dismissing it at first. I decided to try it just in case I could incorporate something from it into my own style someday. I redid some old drawings again with a new sketching process, and that turned out well. Here's my first Steven Universe drawing, and my last. I don't have much to complain about, except that I think I made his eyes too small, but I never really drew a lot of Steven Universe, except for the gems. So, moving on, and then we arrived to my favorite drawing so far, day 86. At this point, I hadn't drawn loose for 17 days, and of course, I'm really proud of how it came out. It's probably what I will use most of the time when I think about the progress I've made during my 90 days of CalArts. As it stands now, I'm really interested in drawing and have a lot to learn, so I want to keep drawing and see what I come up with, and look forward to seeing some more progress in the next few months, or even years if I live that long. So enjoy these 3 last drawings I made on my display before I show you the last drawing I made in this 90-day period. Are you ready? It's another freehand drawing. Is it a bit underwhelming? It doesn't look as good as the ones made from reference, of course, but it doesn't look as flat as the first freehand, which is also the first drawing. Maybe the pupils are a bit too big for the style, and there's too much detail around the ear region here, but I did only spend about 30 minutes on it, whereas I spend around 60 minutes on a full drawing from reference if I don't dilly-daddle too much. That's pretty much it. I started out drawing with no sketches, and an uncolored headshot could take me around 80 minutes, and now I have an improved sketching process and can do a full body in about an hour, color and all. So there you have it, my 90 days of the CalArt style. I made about 105 drawings. I'll have the number on the screen. I've picked up a few things, but I have a lot to learn obviously, so that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm not sure what my next big project will be, but I'll probably focus on the fundamentals and make my sketching process more efficient or quicker. Color theory, I'm already doing a bit of backgrounds and learning about perspective, so what do you think?
Hey Matrix, how's the CalArts video? Fuck, that's right. Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Like what? You bought 7 furry books? I don't think it's a good idea. You're buying a 24-inch drawing tablet? Yeah, stupid dumb. Lib shit. Get out of here with that, stupid.